When a billionaire's black card falls into the wrong hands, most people see opportunity. Elena Brooks saw a freezing child who needed help. What she didn't know? That homeless little girl begging on the corner was Emma Stone, the daughter Manhattan's most powerful man had been searching for during 3 devastating years. One act of kindness, one impossible coincidence. And suddenly, a broke waitress holding stolen plastic became the only person standing between a broken father and his lost child. This is their story. Drop a comment with your city below so I can see how far this reaches, and let's begin. The card sat on table 17 like a trap. Elena Brooks noticed it immediately. That distinctive matte black rectangle half hidden beneath a folded napkin where Mr. Stone had been sitting. Her fingers hovered over it for a second, trembling slightly as the weight of what she was looking at sank in. Not a credit card, not even a platinum card. An American Express Centurion card. The kind of financial instrument that existed in a completely different universe from her own. She should have run after him immediately, should have called out across the restaurant, flagged down the hostess, done something in those first crucial seconds. But her feet stayed planted, and her hand remained frozen in midair because part of her brain, the exhausted, rent-overdue, living-on instant ramen part, was doing math she didn't want to acknowledge. No limit. That's what these cards meant. No spending limit. Elena, table 9 needs water. Marco's voice cut through her thoughts, sharp with the irritation of a floor manager who'd already told her twice. She grabbed the card quickly, shoving it deep into her apron pocket where it burned against her hip like evidence. On it. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of forced smiles and automatic movements. Refill drinks, clear plates. Pretend the small fortune in her pocket wasn't screaming at her with every step. By the time she clocked out at 11:30, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely untie her apron. The November air hit her like a slap when she pushed through the employee exit into the alley. New York cold wasn't like other cold. It had teeth. It found every gap in her thrift store coat and reminded her exactly how thin the fabric was. She pulled it tighter and started the familiar walk toward the subway, her breath forming small clouds that disappeared into the darkness. The card felt heavier with each block. Elena had never stolen anything in her life, had never even been tempted, really. But standing at the corner of 5th and 52nd, watching yellow cabs carry people to warm homes she'd never see the inside of, something ugly and desperate whispered in her mind. He wouldn't even notice. People like that lose more money in their couch cushions than you make in a month. You could fix everything, pay rent, buy real food, maybe even, please. The voice was so small Elena almost missed it. She turned and found a little girl sitting against the brick wall of a closed boutique, knees pulled to her chest, wearing a jacket that might have fit her 2 years ago. Her dark hair hung in tangled knots around a face that was too pale, too thin, too everything that made Elena's chest physically hurt. Please, I'm really hungry. Elena had passed 100 homeless people on her walk home tonight. She always did. You couldn't live in Manhattan without developing that selective blindness, that practiced way of looking through suffering because acknowledging all of it would drown you. But something about this child, this specific child on this specific night, made that practiced detachment impossible. She crouched down, ignoring how her knees protested the movement. Hey, sweetie, where are your parents? The girl's eyes went wide and skittish, like a stray cat deciding whether to bolt. I can't. It's okay. Elena kept her voice soft, non-threatening. She'd been scared plenty of times herself. She recognized it. You don't have to tell me anything. Are you hungry? A tiny nod. Elena's hand went to her pocket where she kept her tips from tonight. $43 and some change. Enough for her MetroCard refill and maybe some groceries if she stuck to the basics. Her fingers touched the bills, then slid past them to the card underneath. The black card. This is insane, she thought. This is literally insane and probably illegal and definitely the worst idea you've ever had. But the little girl was shivering and Elena could see her breath, and suddenly all the rational arguments about theft and consequences felt very far away compared to the immediate reality of a child freezing on a street corner. Come on, Elena said, standing and extending her hand. Let's get you something to eat. The girl stared at her hand like it might be a trick. Really? Really? Small fingers wrapped around hers, and Elena felt something shift in her chest. The girl stood up, and Elena could see she was taller than she'd first appeared, maybe 7 or 8 years old, though it was hard to tell through the layers of grime and exhaustion. She had delicate features that would probably be beautiful if she weren't so obviously neglected, and eyes that held a kind of wary intelligence that broke Elena's heart. They walked 3 blocks to a 24-hour diner that Elena sometimes went to on paydays when she needed to feel like a person instead of a ghost. The fluorescent lights inside were harsh and unflattering, but they were warm, and that mattered more than aesthetics. "Sit anywhere," the night waitress called out without looking up from her phone. Elena guided the girl to a corner booth and grabbed 2 plastic menus from the caddy. "You can order whatever you want, okay? Whatever sounds good." The girl's eyes went impossibly wider. "Anything?" "Anything." Those small hands grabbed the menu with an urgency that suggested she hadn't heard those words in a very long time. Elena watched her scan the options, her lips moving slightly as she read, and felt her throat tighten. This wasn't right. None of this was right. A child this young shouldn't be on the streets, shouldn't be this hungry, shouldn't look at a diner menu like it was Christmas morning. "The pancakes," the girl said finally, pointing with a finger that had dirt under the nail. "And maybe, could I have orange juice?" "Pancakes and orange juice, perfect. Anything else? Eggs? Bacon?" A hesitant nod. "Bacon?" "Bacon it is." Elena flagged down the waitress and ordered enough food for 2 people, plus a coffee for herself that she definitely couldn't afford but desperately needed. When the waitress walked away, Elena turned her attention back to the girl. "I'm Elena. What's your name?" The girl's face went carefully blank. I don't remember." That was a lie. Elena had heard enough lies in her life to recognize one, but she didn't push. "Okay, that's okay. Do you remember where you live?" Another head shake, this one more convincing. The fear in those eyes looked real enough. "How long have you been out here? On the streets?" "I don't know. A long time. The days they all look the same now." The food arrived faster than Elena expected. The girl's hand shook as she picked up the fork, and then she was eating with a single-minded intensity that made small talk impossible. Elena sipped her coffee and tried not to stare, tried not to let her expression show how much this was destroying her. Halfway through the pancakes, the girl paused. "Aren't you going to eat?" "I'm not hungry. You go ahead." That was a lie too, but a necessary one. Elena had been hungry for most of the last year, that low-grade, constant hunger that became background noise after a while. She could wait. This child couldn't. When the girl finally slowed down, looking almost drowsy with the sudden influx of food and warmth, Elena made her decision. "Listen, I need to make sure you're safe tonight. Do you have somewhere to sleep? Somewhere warm?" The girl's expression went guarded again. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." A long silence. Then so quietly Elena almost missed it. "Sometimes the subway. Sometimes there's a place under the bridge where the steam vents keep it warm." "No." The word came out harder than Elena intended. She softened her voice. "No, not tonight. Not in this cold." She pulled out her phone and started searching for shelters, for emergency services, for something that could help. But it was nearly 1 in the morning, and the city's resources for homeless children were either full, closed, or required paperwork that Elena couldn't provide for a girl who wouldn't give her real name. The black card seemed to pulse in her pocket like a heartbeat. "This is theft," her conscience whispered. "This is someone else's money, and you have no right, and when they catch you..." But they wouldn't catch her tonight, and by tomorrow she could return the card, explain the situation, face whatever consequences came. Tonight, though, she could make sure one little girl wasn't freezing to death on a subway platform. "Come on," Elena said, sliding out of the booth and dropping enough cash to cover the bill on the table. Her own money, not his, because she wasn't a complete criminal. "We're getting you somewhere safe to sleep." The girl's forehead wrinkled. "Where?" "A hotel, just for tonight." "I don't have money for a hotel." "I know, but I do." That was technically true, even if the money wasn't actually hers. Elena pushed down the guilt and focused on the immediate problem, finding a place that would take them this late without too many questions. She settled on a small hotel near Penn Station, not fancy, but clean and warm and within walking distance. The clerk at the front desk looked them over with obvious skepticism. An exhausted woman in a waitress uniform and a dirty child at nearly 2 in the morning. Elena could see him forming assumptions, none of them good. "I need a room," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Just for tonight. ID and credit card." Elena slid her driver's license across the counter along with the black card, her heart hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. His eyes widened slightly when he saw the card, and suddenly his whole demeanor shifted. "Of course. I'll just need you to sign here." Her hand shook as she signed Elena Brooks in the space provided. The clerk barely glanced at it, too focused on the card itself. Within minutes, they had a key to room 412. The room was small and plain, but it had a bed, heat that actually worked, and a bathroom with a shower. The girl stood in the doorway, staring at it all, like she wasn't sure it was real. "Go ahead," Elena said gently. "It's yours for the night." "Where will you sleep?" "I'll head home. I just wanted to make sure you had somewhere safe." The girl's face crumpled, fear flooding back. "You're leaving." The panic in her voice made Elena's decision for her. No, I'll stay. It's late anyway." She moved to the bed and sat down on the edge. "Why don't you take a shower? There's soap and shampoo in the bathroom. Take your time." The girl disappeared into the bathroom, and Elena heard the water start running. She used the moment alone to think through what she'd just done. Stolen a credit card. Used it without permission. Checked into a hotel with a child who wasn't hers and wouldn't give her real name. "Tomorrow," she promised herself. "Tomorrow you'll return the card and figure out the right thing to do. Tonight, you just keep her warm." 20 minutes later, the girl emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her skin pink from hot water, her hair wet but clean. She looked younger this way, more fragile. "Feel better?" Elena asked. A small nod. I don't have clean clothes." "I know." Elena grabbed her phone again. "Give me a minute." She ordered clothes from a 24-hour convenience store that delivered. A package of underwear, a t-shirt 3 sizes too big, sweatpants, warm socks, added a toothbrush and toothpaste. The total made her wince, but she was already in this deep. While they waited for the delivery, Elena noticed the girl shivering despite the warm room. She pulled back the covers on the bed. "Get in, warm up." The girl climbed in immediately, disappearing under the blanket until only her eyes showed. "This is the nicest thing anyone's done for me, and I don't even know how long." Elena felt her throat close up. "I'm sorry that's true. Why are you helping me?" It was a fair question. Elena didn't have a good answer. "Because you needed help, and I could help. That's enough, isn't it?" When the clothes arrived, Elena helped the girl get dressed. As she was pulling the t-shirt over the girl's head, her hand brushed the skin behind her left ear, and she felt something. A raised patch of skin. A birthmark, maybe, or a scar. She gently pushed the wet hair aside to look. A star. A perfect star-shaped birthmark, about the size of a dime, in that specific spot behind the ear. Elena's blood went cold. She'd seen that birthmark before. 3 weeks ago. On a missing person poster taped to a telephone pole near her apartment. A poster that had been up so long it was weathered and torn, advertising a reward for information about a girl who'd vanished years ago. Emma Stone. Missing since age 4. Star-shaped birthmark behind left ear. "If you have any information—" "What's wrong?" the girl asked, pulling away from Elena's sudden stillness. Elena forced herself to breathe normally. "Nothing. Just making sure the shirt fits okay." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. Because if this girl was Emma Stone, and that birthmark suggested she was, then she wasn't just any homeless child. She was the daughter of Alexander Stone, the billionaire who'd left his black card on table 17, the billionaire whose card Elena had just used. The implications hit her like a physical blow. She'd stolen from Alexander Stone, had used his money without permission, and now she was in a hotel room with his missing daughter. And if she came forward with this information, how would it look? A desperate waitress who'd found the missing heiress by coincidence and happened to have stolen from her father? Who would believe that? It looked like a setup, like a con, like she'd somehow planned this. Elena's hands started shaking again. "I'm really tired," the girl, Emma, said, her eyes already drooping. "Is it okay if I sleep now?" "Of course." Get some rest. Elena watched as Emma burrowed deeper into the blankets, her breathing evening out within minutes. The exhaustion must have been profound for her to fall asleep this quickly, this completely, with a stranger in the room. Elena pulled out her phone with trembling hands and Googled Emma Stone missing. The results flooded her screen. Dozens of articles, news coverage, a father's desperate pleas for information, a reward that had started at $1 million and grown to $5 million over 3 years of fruitless searching. Alexander Stone had been looking for this child for 3 years, had spent God knows how much money on private investigators and public campaigns, had never stopped searching, and Elena had found her by accident on a street corner. She looked at the black card sitting on the nightstand where she'd placed it, then back at the sleeping girl. Tomorrow, she thought again. Tomorrow you'll figure this out. Tomorrow you'll do the right thing. But even as she thought it, she knew the situation was already far more complicated than the right thing could cover. Because tomorrow, she'd have to admit what she'd done. Have to face Alexander Stone and explain why she'd used his card without permission, why she hadn't called the police immediately when she'd recognized Emma, why she'd waited. And maybe, probably, he wouldn't believe her motivations were pure. Maybe he'd think she was trying to extort him. Maybe he'd have her arrested before she could explain. Elena curled up in the chair by the window, pulling her coat over herself like a blanket. Sleep didn't come. Instead, she spent the dark hours watching Emma breathe, watching the city lights reflect off the window, and trying to figure out how to navigate the mess she'd created with one impulsive act of kindness. The girl shifted in her sleep, making a small sound that might have been distress. Elena moved to the bed instinctively, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're safe," she whispered. "I've got you." Emma settled immediately, her face relaxing back into deeper sleep, and Elena realized with a sinking feeling that she was already in too deep to walk away. This wasn't just about returning a stolen card anymore. It was about a child who'd been missing for 3 years, who flinched at loud noises and wouldn't give her name, who looked at a diner menu like it was treasure. Something had happened to Emma Stone. Something bad enough that she was living on the streets instead of in her father's penthouse. And until Elena understood what that something was, she couldn't just hand Emma over and hope for the best. She pulled out her phone again and started reading everything she could find about Emma's disappearance. The articles painted a picture of a custody battle gone wrong. Alexander Stone and his ex-wife, Victoria, had separated when Emma was 3. Joint custody, but increasingly contentious. Then one day, during Victoria's scheduled time with Emma, they'd both vanished. The investigation had focused on Victoria initially. Evidence suggested she'd fled the country with Emma, possibly to Europe. But the trail had gone cold in Paris, and neither Victoria nor Emma had been seen since. Alexander had continued searching, convinced his daughter was alive, while others had quietly begun to assume the worst. But Emma was here, in New York, on the streets, which meant either Victoria had brought her back, or Emma had found her way home, or something else entirely had happened. Elena's phone buzzed with a text, her roommate asking where she was. She typed back a quick lie about covering an extra shift and tried to focus on the immediate problem. Morning came too fast and too bright. Elena had dozed off in the chair sometime around 5 and woke to find Emma sitting up in bed, watching her with those 2 old eyes. "You stayed," Emma said softly. "I said I would." People say things, doesn't mean they do them. That casual cynicism in a 7-year-old's voice was gutting. Elena stood up, stretching out the kinks in her neck. "Well, I meant it. Are you hungry?" Emma nodded. They ordered room service, another charge on the black card that made Elena's conscience scream, but her protective instincts override it. Over pancakes and eggs, Elena tried to figure out how to approach the impossible conversation they needed to have. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. Emma looked up warily. "Okay." "Your name. You said you don't remember it, but I think maybe you do remember. You just don't want to tell me." Emma's face went very still. "Why do you think that?" "Because you're smart and scared, and probably you've learned that sometimes telling the truth gets you hurt." A long silence. Then, "Maybe. I'm not going to hurt you, and I'm not going to make you tell me anything you don't want to, but I need you to know that I'm trying to help, really help. And if there's something you need to tell me, something important, you can." Emma set down her fork, her hands twisted together in her lap. "If I tell you my real name, you'll make me go back." "Go back where?" To before. To the bad place. Elena's chest tightened. What bad place? But Emma just shook her head, tears starting to slip down her cheeks. I can't talk about it. Please don't make me talk about it. Elena moved around the table immediately, crouching beside Emma's chair. Okay, you don't have to. It's okay. Emma threw her arms around Elena's neck, sobbing into her shoulder with the kind of desperate grief that spoke of trauma Elena couldn't begin to understand. She held the girl and made soothing sounds and felt completely, utterly out of her depth. When the crying finally subsided, Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Never be sorry for crying. My name is Emma, the girl whispered. Emma Stone. And I know you figured it out. I saw you looking at my birthmark last night. Elena's heart stopped. Emma, I ran away, Emma continued, the words tumbling out now like a dam breaking. From her, from my mom. She took me and I couldn't get back, and when I finally did get back, I couldn't find my dad. And I was scared if I told anyone who I was, she'd find me again and take me back. Take you back where? Different places. We moved a lot. She kept saying we were hiding from him, that he was dangerous, that he'd hurt us if he found us, but she was the one who... Emma's voice broke. She was the one who hurt me. When I was bad. When I didn't listen. When I cried too much. Elena felt something dark and violent rise in her chest. She hurt you? A tiny nod. I tried to be good. I really tried, but I wasn't good enough, and she said I was just like him, and that's why nobody wanted me. That's not true, Emma. That's not true. I know. I think I know now, but for a long time I believed it. And then one day she just left me. We were in Grand Central Station, and she said she'd be right back, and then she never came back. That was 6 months ago. 6 months. This child had been surviving on the streets for 6 months while her father searched for her and her mother abandoned her. Emma, Elena said carefully, your dad has been looking for you. He never stopped looking. He wants you back. Fear flooded Emma's face. No, you can't tell him. He'll be angry that I couldn't find him sooner. He'll blame me. He won't. You don't know that. You don't know what he's like now. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he doesn't want me anymore. Maybe... Emma, stop. Elena took the girl's face gently in her hands. Listen to me. Your dad left his credit card at the restaurant where I work. Do you know what that is? It's a black card. People who have black cards have a lot of money. And he just left it. Do you know why I think he left it? Emma shook her head, tears still streaming. I think maybe he was testing me. I think maybe he wanted to see what I'd do with it. And if that's true, it means he's going to come looking for it. Probably today. Then we have to leave before he finds us. No. Elena kept her voice firm. No more running. You've been running for 3 years. It's time to stop. I'm scared. I know, I'm scared too. But Emma, I promise you, I won't let anyone hurt you. Not your mom, not anyone. Do you trust me? It was a huge question, too huge for someone Elena had known for less than 12 hours. But Emma looked at her with those old, tired eyes and said, yes. Okay. Then here's what we're going to do. I'm going to call your dad and tell him I found his card. And I'm going to tell him I used it. And I'm going to explain why. And then we're going to tell him about you, together, okay? What if he doesn't believe you? Then we'll figure it out. But Emma, he deserves to know you're safe. And you deserve to see if the man looking for you is the dad you remember or someone different. You deserve to make that choice yourself. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay. Elena pulled out her phone, her hands shaking again, but this time for different reasons. She didn't have Alexander Stone's personal number, but she had something better, the name of his restaurant. Someone there would know how to reach him. The phone rang 3 times before a professional voice answered. Le Bernardin, how may I help you? Hi, this is Elena Brooks. I'm a waitress there. I need to speak with Alexander Stone. It's urgent. I'm sorry Mr. Stone isn't here. Would you like to leave a message? Can you give me his direct number? It's about something he left at the restaurant last night. A pause. I'm not authorized to give out personal contact information, but I can forward your message to his office. Elena's frustration spiked. This can't wait. Please, tell him Elena Brooks found his black card. Tell him I need to speak with him immediately. Another pause, longer this time. Hold, please. The hold music was classical and irritating. Emma watched her with wide eyes. What if he's really angry? Then he's angry. We'll deal with it. The music cut off abruptly. A new voice came on the line, male, deep, and very, very controlled. This is Alexander Stone. Elena's mouth went dry. Mr. Stone, I'm Elena Brooks. I was your waitress last night at Le Bernardin. I know who you are, Miss Brooks. You have my card. Yes. And you used it. Not a question, a statement. Elena's heart hammered. Yes. For what, exactly? She could lie, could downplay it, but Emma was watching her and Elena had promised no more lies. For a hotel room and food and clothes. Silence on the other end. Then, you stole my credit card to buy yourself a hotel room. Not for myself, for a little girl I found on the street. She was freezing and hungry and I didn't have anywhere else to take her. A little girl? Yes. And you thought using my card without permission was the appropriate response to this situation? His voice was ice. Elena forced herself to keep breathing. No, I knew it was wrong, but she needed help right then, and I didn't have the resources, and you did, and I made a choice. I'm not saying it was the right choice legally, but it was the right choice for her. Where are you now? A hotel near Penn Station, room 412. Stay there. I'm coming to you. Mr. Stone, stay there. He hung up. Elena lowered the phone slowly. Emma had gone very pale. He's coming? He's coming. What do we do? We wait, and we tell him the truth, all of it. The next hour was the longest of Elena's life. She tried to keep Emma calm, tried to project a confidence she absolutely didn't feel. They packed up the few belongings Emma had, which was basically nothing, and waited. The knock came sharp and authoritative. Elena opened the door to find Alexander Stone standing in the hallway, and the first thing she thought was that he looked terrible. Not physically. He was still wearing an expensive suit and clearly hadn't let himself go. But his eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted, like he hadn't slept in years. Miss Brooks. His gaze went past her into the room, landing on Emma. He froze. Everything about him went completely still except for his eyes, which widened with an emotion Elena couldn't quite name. Emma? His voice cracked on the name. Emma had pressed herself against the far wall, making herself small. Hi, Daddy. Alexander Stone, billionaire and power player, dropped to his knees right there in the hallway. Emma. Emma. And then he was crying, deep, wrenching sobs that he didn't even try to hide. Elena had never seen a grown man cry like that, like something inside him had broken open and couldn't be contained. Emma took a hesitant step forward, then another. Then she was running, and Alexander caught her, pulling her into his arms and holding on like she might disappear if he let go. I'm sorry, Emma sobbed into his shoulder. I'm sorry I couldn't find you sooner. I'm sorry I... Shh. No, don't apologize. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Elena stood there awkwardly, witnessing something too private for an audience, but unable to look away. Eventually, Alexander raised his head and looked at her over Emma's shoulder. His face was wet with tears, his expression raw. How long have you had her? Since last night, about 1 a.m. And you didn't call the police? I was going to, but Emma was scared and I wanted to understand why before I made her face something she wasn't ready for. You used my card. Yes. You stole from me. Yes. He studied her for a long moment, still holding Emma. Why? Because she was cold and hungry, and I couldn't fix that with my own money, so I used yours. And then you called me anyway, even though you knew I could have you arrested. Elena lifted her chin. She needed to see you, and you needed to know she was alive. Everything else seemed less important than that. Alexander stood up slowly, keeping one hand on Emma's shoulder like he needed the physical contact to believe she was real. "Come inside. We need to talk." They moved into the hotel room. Alexander sat on the bed with Emma pressed against his side, unwilling to let even an inch of space between them. Elena took the chair by the window and prepared for whatever came next. "Tell me everything," Alexander said, "from the beginning." So Elena did. She told him about finding the card, about the decision to use it, about meeting Emma and realizing who she was. She didn't sugarcoat her own actions or try to make herself look better. She just laid out the facts and waited for judgment. When she finished, Alexander was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to Emma. "Baby, can you tell me what happened? Where you've been?" Emma's hand found his, gripping tight, and in a small, halting voice, she told her father about 3 years of hell, about Victoria taking her, about the moving and hiding and the fear, about the abuse that had started as punishment and escalated into something worse, about being abandoned in Grand Central Station and learning to survive on the streets because she was too scared to trust anyone with her real name. By the time she finished, Alexander's jaw was so tight Elena thought he might crack his teeth. But his voice stayed gentle when he spoke to Emma. "You were so brave, so incredibly brave, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. It's not your fault. It is my fault. I should have seen what she was. I should have fought harder for custody. I should have—" "Mr. Stone," Elena interrupted him before he could spiral further. "What matters now is that Emma's safe, that she's home. The rest is for lawyers and therapists to sort out." He looked at her sharply. "You're very calm about all of this." "I'm not calm. I'm terrified and way out of my depth. But falling apart won't help Emma, so I'm staying functional." Something shifted in his expression. "You care about her. After one night, you actually care." "Of course I care. How could I not?" Alexander stood up abruptly, pulling out his phone. "I need to make some calls. Emma needs to see a doctor, and we need to contact the police about Victoria." "No police?" Emma's voice went sharp with panic. "Please, not yet. Emma, she needs to be arrested. She needs to face consequences for what she did." "I know, but not today. Please. I just want today to be about being safe. Can we have today?" Alexander's face softened. Okay, we can have today. But tomorrow we start fixing this. All of it." He made several calls, a private doctor to come check Emma, a therapist who specialized in trauma, someone named James who was apparently his lawyer and closest friend. Then he turned his attention back to Elena. "Miss Brooks, I assume you're waiting for me to either thank you or threaten to press charges." Elena's stomach dropped. "I know what I did was wrong. It was illegal. Yes. You stole from me. Yes. And if I reported this, you'd lose your job at minimum, probably face criminal charges." Elena swallowed hard. "Yes. But you saved my daughter's life." His voice went rough on the last word. "You found her when everyone else had given up. You protected her when you could have walked away. You called me when you could have disappeared. I didn't do it for a reward. I know, that's why I'm not having you arrested." He pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card, holding it out to her. "This is my private number. I want you to stay in Emma's life, at least for now. She trusts you in a way she doesn't trust me yet, and I won't take that away from her." Elena took the card with numb fingers. "I don't understand." "Emma needs stability. She needs people she can count on. You've proven you're one of those people." He hesitated, then added, "And I need help. I don't know how to be a father to a traumatized child. I don't know what she needs or how to give it to her. But you figured it out in one night, so I'm asking, begging, for you to help me figure it out too. I'm just a waitress. I don't have any training in, you have what matters. You have her trust. Please." Emma was watching them both with wide eyes. "Can Elena stay with us, at least for a little while?" Alexander looked at Elena. "My penthouse has guest rooms. You could stay there. Be available when Emma needs you. I'd pay you, obviously. Whatever you make at the restaurant, plus more." It was insane. Everything about this was insane. Elena should say no, should extract herself from this mess before it got more complicated. But Emma was looking at her with such hope. and Alexander was offering her a lifeline she desperately needed. And suddenly no wasn't an option. "Okay," she heard herself say. "I'll stay. For Emma." Relief flooded Alexander's face. "Thank you." The doctor arrived an hour later, a kind older woman who examined Emma gently and thoroughly. Mild malnutrition, some old injuries that had healed badly, evidence of prolonged stress and trauma. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with time, care, and proper treatment. They left the hotel together, Alexander carrying Emma like she weighed nothing, Elena trailing behind with her coat and Emma's new clothes. A black car waited outside, sleek and expensive. Alexander helped Emma into the back seat, then turned to Elena. "I meant what I said, about not pressing charges, and about wanting you to stay." "Why?" Elena had to ask. "Why trust me? You don't know me. I know you used my card to help a stranger instead of yourself. I know you called me when it would have been safer to disappear. I know my daughter feels safe with you." He met her eyes directly. "That's enough." They drove through Manhattan in silence. Emma pressed against Elena's side instead of her father's. It should have hurt Alexander, but his expression was only grateful that Emma had anyone at all to hold on to. The penthouse was everything Elena expected and more. Soaring ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that probably cost more than her annual salary. Emma looked around with recognition and fear mixing on her face. "Your room is exactly how you left it," Alexander said softly. "I didn't change anything, just in case you came home." Emma's hand tightened on Elena's. "Can you come with me? To see it?" "Of course." The three of them walked down a hallway lined with photographs. Emma as a baby, as a toddler, happy and smiling and completely unaware of the nightmare waiting in her future. Emma's room was done in soft purples and whites, filled with toys and books and everything a little girl should have. Emma walked in slowly, touching things like they might disappear. "It's smaller than I remember." "You were smaller when you last saw it," Alexander said. She picked up a stuffed elephant from the bed. "Mr. Peanuts, I thought I'd never see him again." Elena felt her throat close up. Alexander had to turn away, his shoulders shaking. They spent the afternoon in careful negotiation, Emma showing her father she was real, Alexander trying not to smother her with all the fear and relief he'd been carrying for 3 years, Elena acting as buffer and translator between them. By evening, Emma had fallen asleep on the couch mid-sentence, exhausted by emotion and finally safe enough to rest. Alexander carried her to bed. Elena followed, helping him tuck her in. "She's really home," Alexander whispered, staring down at his sleeping daughter. "I can't believe she's really home." "She is." He turned to Elena, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I will never be able to repay you for this. I don't want repayment. I just want her to be okay." "She will be. We'll make sure she is." He took a shaky breath. "I should show you to your room, let you get settled." But before they could leave, Emma stirred, reaching out in her sleep. "Elena?" "I'm here, sweetie. I'm right here. Don't leave." "I won't. I promised, remember?" Emma settled again, reassured. Alexander watched this exchange with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. Gratitude and pain and something else beneath it all. "She needs you," he said quietly. "She needs you too. She's just scared right now. It'll get better." "You really believe that?" Elena looked at Emma, peaceful in sleep for the first time in who knows how long. "Yeah, I really do." And standing there in the soft darkness of Emma's room, watching a father and daughter begin to find their way back to each other, Elena realized her life had just changed in ways she couldn't begin to predict. She'd woken up yesterday as a nobody waitress struggling to pay rent. She'd go to sleep tonight as the person who'd brought Emma Stone home. Tomorrow, she'd figure out what came next. Tonight, she just stayed, like she'd promised. The guest room was bigger than Elena's entire apartment. She stood in the doorway holding the small overnight bag Alexander's assistant had dropped off, containing toiletries and clothes that actually fit, purchased in the 2 hours since they'd arrived, and felt the full weight of her new reality settle over her shoulders. "If you need anything, I'm just down the hall," Alexander said, lingering in the doorway like he wasn't quite sure what to do with his hands. "Emma's room is between us. I thought you'd want to be close, in case she has nightmares." That was smart thinking. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up the carefully styled perfection. I don't know if you've noticed, but I have no idea what I'm doing here. Yeah, I picked up on that. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. At least you're honest. He turned to leave, then stopped. Elena, thank you. I know I already said it, but I need you to understand. You gave me back my whole world today. Elena's chest tightened. She's a pretty great kid. She is, or she was. I don't know who she is now after everything Victoria put her through. His jaw clenched. I'm going to destroy her for this. Legally, financially, every way possible. Mr. Stone, Alexander, please. After everything, I think we're past formalities. Alexander, Elena corrected. Emma needs you focused on her, not on revenge. Victoria will get what's coming to her, but right now your daughter needs stability more than she needs you to be angry. He stared at her for a long moment. You're very direct for someone who was serving me wine 24 hours ago. You asked me to help. That means being honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Fair enough. He nodded slowly. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. That turned out to be a massive understatement. Elena woke at 3 a.m. to screaming. She was out of bed and running before her brain fully processed what was happening, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. Emma's door was already open, light spilling into the hallway. Alexander knelt beside Emma's bed, trying to calm her while she thrashed and sobbed, still caught in whatever nightmare had its claws in her. Don't touch me. Please, I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Elena's heart cracked. She moved to the other side of the bed, keeping her voice low and steady. Emma, sweetie, you're safe. You're home. Nobody's going to hurt you. Emma's eyes opened, wild and unseeing. She's coming back. She's going to take me again. No, she's not. Alexander's voice shook. I won't let her anywhere near you. But Emma was still panicking, her breathing coming in short gasps that suggested a full-blown panic attack. Elena caught Alexander's eye and jerked her head toward the door. He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression made him back off. Once he was gone, Elena sat on the edge of the bed. Emma, look at me. Can you look at me? It took a few seconds, but Emma's gaze finally focused on her face. Good. Now breathe with me, in through your nose. Elena demonstrated, making it slow and exaggerated. Out through your mouth. Come on, you can do it. Emma tried, stumbling at first, but gradually her breathing evened out. The panic faded from her eyes, replaced by exhaustion and shame. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake everyone up. You don't apologize for nightmares. They're not your fault. Daddy looked so scared. Elena glanced toward the door where Alexander was probably still standing, listening. He was scared for you, not of you. There's a difference. He doesn't know what to do with me. He's learning. Give him time. Elena pulled the blankets back up around Emma's shoulders. Do you want to talk about the dream? It was the apartment. The last one, before she left me. Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She was hitting me because I broke a plate. I didn't mean to, but my hands were shaking and it slipped, and she got so angry. Elena felt rage bubble up in her throat, hot and bitter. She swallowed it down because Emma didn't need her anger right now. That must have been terrifying. She said I was worthless, that nobody would ever want a clumsy, stupid girl like me. Emma's eyes filled with tears. What if she was right? She wasn't right. She was cruel and wrong, and everything she told you was a lie designed to hurt you. How do you know? Because I've seen you, the real you, and there's nothing worthless about a kid who survived 3 years of hell and came out the other side still capable of kindness. Elena smoothed Emma's hair back from her forehead. Your mom was damaged and broken, and she tried to break you too. But she failed. You're still here. You're still fighting. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, will you stay until I fall asleep again? Of course. Elena settled into the chair beside the bed, pulling a blanket over herself. Emma's eyes were already drooping, the adrenaline crash pulling her back under. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out into sleep. How did you know to do that? Elena nearly jumped out of her skin. Alexander stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Do what? Make her feel safe. I tried to calm her down and she just got more upset. Elena kept her voice low so she wouldn't wake Emma. You were touching her. When she's in that headspace, touch feels like a threat, not comfort. But she let you sit on the bed. Because I asked with my presence, not my hands, and because I stayed calm. Kids pick up on adult emotions. If you're panicking, they panic worse. Alexander leaned against the doorframe. Where did you learn that? I didn't learn it anywhere. I just paid attention to what she needed. Elena pulled the blanket tighter. You should get some sleep. I'll stay here tonight. You don't have to. I know, but I'm going to anyway. He studied her in the darkness. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone more impressed by all this. He gestured vaguely at the expensive surroundings. Someone who wanted something from me. I do want something from you. His expression went guarded. What? I want you to be the father Emma needs. That's it. That's the whole list. Alexander was quiet for so long, Elena thought maybe he'd left. Then, I don't know how to be that person. Before Victoria took her, Emma was 4. She loved bedtime stories and finger painting and chase. I knew how to be a dad to that Emma. But this Emma, his voice cracked. This Emma flinches when I move too fast. This Emma has nightmares that make her scream. I don't know how to fix that. You can't fix it. You can only be present for it. That doesn't feel like enough. It's going to have to be, at least for now. Elena shifted in the chair, her back already protesting the awkward position. Go to bed, Alexander. We'll figure out tomorrow when it gets here. He left without another word, and Elena spent the rest of the night watching Emma sleep, listening for the first signs of another nightmare that thankfully never came. Morning brought a new set of challenges. Emma woke up quiet and withdrawn, barely touching the breakfast Alexander's housekeeper had prepared. She sat at the massive dining table looking small and lost, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate while Alexander tried to make conversation that fell flat. So I was thinking, he said with forced cheerfulness, maybe we could do something fun today. Go to the park or the zoo. What sounds good? Emma shrugged without looking up. Or we could stay here, watch movies, whatever you want. Another shrug. Alexander's frustration was starting to show. Elena caught his eye and gave a small shake of her head. Pushing wasn't going to help. Emma, Elena said gently, are you feeling okay? Tired. Did you sleep after the nightmare? A small nod. Sometimes our bodies need extra rest after bad dreams. That's normal. Elena stood up. Why don't you go back to bed for a while? We're not going anywhere. Relief flooded Emma's face. Really? Really. Rest is important. Emma disappeared back to her room without argument. The moment she was gone, Alexander dropped his head into his hands. I'm failing already. It's been one day and I'm already failing. You're not failing, you're adjusting. She won't even look at me. She's scared and traumatized, and probably feeling guilty for being scared of you when she knows logically she shouldn't be. Elena poured herself more coffee. Give it time. What if time isn't enough? What if I've lost her permanently? Then you'll still show up every day and be her father anyway. That's what parents do. Alexander looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. You sound like you know from experience. Elena hesitated. She didn't talk about her childhood, didn't let people into that particular box of pain, but something about the rawness in Alexander's expression made her reconsider. My dad left when I was 6, she said quietly, just walked out one day and never came back. My mom tried, but she was depressed and overwhelmed, and eventually the state took me away. I spent the next 12 years in foster care. Elena, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I know what it's like to be a kid who's lost everything. And I know what I needed from the adults around me wasn't perfection. It was consistency. It was someone who showed up even when it was hard, even when I pushed them away. She met his gaze directly. Emma doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be steady. I can do steady. Good, because the therapist is coming at noon, and that's going to be rough. The therapist turned out to be a woman in her 50s named Dr. Sarah Chen, who had kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that Elena immediately respected. She spent an hour with Emma alone, then called both Alexander and Elena in for a conversation that stripped away any illusions about quick fixes. Emma has significant trauma, Dr. Chen said bluntly, sitting in Alexander's living room with her notes spread across the coffee table. PTSD, attachment issues, probable depression. The fact that she's functioning at all is remarkable, but functioning isn't the same as healing. What does she need? Alexander asked. Time, therapy, safety, routine, and probably medication, at least in the short term, to help manage the anxiety and nightmares. Whatever she needs, she'll have. It's not that simple, Mr. Stone. Money can buy access to good care, but it can't buy healing. That's going to take work. From Emma, yes, but also from you. Dr. Chen turned to Elena. And from you, Miss Brooks. Emma talks about you constantly. You're her safe person right now. You're the one she trusts, which means you're going to be crucial in her recovery. Dr. Chen's expression was serious. But I need to be clear about something. You can't be her parent. That's Alexander's job. Your role is support, not replacement. I understand. Do you? Because from what Emma tells me, she's already casting you as the good parent and her father as the uncertain one. That's a dynamic we need to correct before it becomes permanent. Alexander flinched. Elena felt defensive anger rise in her chest. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just trying to help. I know, and your help is valuable, but Emma needs to rebuild her relationship with her father, and that can't happen if she has you as an escape hatch. Doctor, Chen softened slightly. I'm not saying distance yourself. I'm saying be mindful of the balance. Encourage her connection with Alexander. Don't let her hide behind you. It was good advice. Frustrating, but good. Elena nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. The conversation shifted to treatment plans and medication options and scheduling. By the time Dr. Chen left, Elena's head was spinning with information, and Alexander looked like he'd been hit by a truck. This is going to take years, he said numbly. She said years of therapy. Yeah. I don't know what I thought. That getting her back would be the hard part and everything after would be easier. Nothing about this is easy. Elena sat down beside him on the couch, maintaining enough distance to be professional, but close enough to offer comfort. But it's possible. Emma can heal. It's just going to take work. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. You don't get to opt out. You're her father. You show up anyway. He turned to look at her, really look at her. Why are you doing this? You could have taken the reward money and disappeared. Instead, you're here, in the middle of someone else's mess, giving advice you have no obligation to give. Elena considered lying, considered giving him some noble reason that would make her sound better than she was. But dishonesty felt wrong after everything. Because I know what it's like to be Emma, she said simply. And I know what it's like to need someone to stay. Nobody stayed for me. So I'm staying for her. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. You're remarkable. I'm really not. You are. And I'm grateful you're here. The moment stretched between them, heavy with something Elena didn't want to examine. She stood up abruptly. I should check on Emma. She found Emma in her room, surrounded by sketchbooks and colored pencils that hadn't been touched in 3 years. The girl was drawing furiously, her face intense with concentration. What are you working on? Elena asked from the doorway. Emma looked up, startled. Just pictures of things I remember. Can I see? Emma hesitated, then held up the sketchbook. The drawing was crude but effective, a small figure cowering in a corner while a larger figure loomed over them, hand raised. The violence was implied but unmistakable. Is this from your nightmares? Elena asked carefully. It's from real life. Dr. Chen said drawing might help me process things. Elena sat down on the floor beside Emma's workspace. What do you want to do with the pictures once you're done? I don't know. Burn them, maybe? That could be powerful, like getting rid of the memories. Except I can't get rid of them. They're stuck in my head. Emma set down her pencil. Do you think I'll ever feel normal again? I think you'll feel different, maybe better, but normal is overrated anyway. Emma almost smiled. You're weird, you know that? I've been told. I like it. Everyone else acts like I'm made of glass, like if they say the wrong thing, I'll shatter. You're tougher than glass. You're more like, I don't know, steel. Bent, maybe, but not broken. I feel broken. I know, but feelings aren't facts. So Elena picked up one of the colored pencils, rolling it between her fingers. Can I tell you something? Okay. When I was in foster care, I had this caseworker named Mrs. Peterson. She was the first adult who didn't treat me like a problem to be solved. She told me that healing isn't linear. Some days you're fine, some days you're a mess, and both are okay. Elena met Emma's eyes. You don't have to be brave all the time. You don't have to pretend this is easier than it is. Daddy needs me to be okay. I can see it on his face. He wants his little girl back. He wants you back, whatever version of you exists now. But Emma, you can't heal for him. You have to heal for you. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't know how to be around him. He's my dad and I love him, but he also feels like a stranger. That makes sense. You've both changed. It's going to take time to get to know each other again. What if he doesn't like who I am now? Then he's an idiot, but I don't think that's going to happen. Emma picked up her pencil again, adding dark shadows to her drawing. Elena, will you stay, even when things get hard? Yeah, Emma, I'll stay. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Mornings were usually rough. Emma's nightmares meant she rarely slept through the night, which meant Elena and Alexander took turns being the one she reached for in the dark. Doctor. Chen came 3 times a week. A private tutor started working with Emma to figure out what educational gaps needed filling. Alexander rearranged his entire schedule to be home more, delegating business he'd never trusted anyone else with. And slowly, in ways almost too small to notice, things began to shift. Emma started sleeping in her own bed through the night, sometimes. She began eating more consistently. She laughed at something stupid Alexander said during dinner one evening, then looked surprised at herself, like she'd forgotten laughter was allowed. But the progress wasn't linear. 2 weeks in, Elena woke to find Emma's room empty at 4 a.m. Panic seized her immediately. She ran through the penthouse, checking every room, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might be sick. She found Emma on the living room balcony. The girl stood at the railing in her pajamas, looking out over Manhattan's glittering skyline. Elena approached slowly, trying to keep her terror in check. Emma, what are you doing out here? I couldn't sleep. I didn't mean to scare you. Elena joined her at the railing, staying close but not touching. It's 4 a.m. and freezing. You scared me a lot, actually. Sorry. What's going on? Bad dream? No, Emma wrapped her arms around herself. I keep thinking about her, about Mom, where she is, if she's looking for me. The investigators are trying to find her. Your dad's made sure of that. What happens when they do find her? She'll be arrested, charged with parental kidnapping and abuse. She'll go to prison. Emma's face was unreadable. Part of me wants that, wants her to pay for what she did, but part of me just feels sad, because she's still my mom, you know? Even though she's terrible, she's still the person who used to read me stories and make me breakfast. That's normal. You're allowed to have complicated feelings about her. Daddy doesn't understand that. He wants me to hate her as much as he does. Have you told him that's not how you feel? I can't. It would hurt him. Elena sighed. Emma, come inside. You're going to freeze to death out here, and then we'll all be sad. They went back to Emma's room. Elena tucked her in, then sat on the edge of the bed. You need to talk to your dad. Really talk, not just surface stuff. What if he gets angry? Then he gets angry. He'll get over it. But this thing where you hide how you really feel to protect him, that's not sustainable. You do it too, Emma pointed out. You never talk about yourself. You never tell him when you're tired or upset. Elena opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The kid had a point. Okay, how about we make a deal? You try to be more honest with your dad, and I'll try to be more honest too. Deal. But being honest turned out to be harder than Elena expected. 3 weeks into her stay at the penthouse, Alexander's lawyer, James, showed up for a meeting that turned into an argument Elena could hear from 2 rooms away. You can't keep her here indefinitely without addressing the legal situation, James was saying, his voice sharp with frustration. Elena Brooks is not a licensed childcare provider. She's not a relative. She's a waitress you barely know who you're paying under the table to live in your house with your daughter. Do you understand how that looks? I don't care how it looks. Emma needs her. Then formalize it. Make her an employee. Give her a contract and proper compensation. Make this legitimate before someone decides it isn't and calls CPS. Elena felt cold. She hadn't considered that her presence might create legal problems for Alexander. Hadn't thought past the immediate need to help Emma. She walked into Alexander's office without knocking. Both men looked up, James with surprise, Alexander with relief. He's right, Elena said. This needs to be official. Elena, no, he's right. I'm here on handshakes and good intentions. That's not enough. She turned to James. What do I need to sign? James and Alexander exchanged looks. Then James pulled out his laptop. Let's start with the standard employment contract. Personal assistant with childcare duties. We'll include lodging as part of the compensation package. They spent the next 2 hours hammering out details. Salary that made Elena's head spin. Benefits. Responsibilities. A clause that specified her role was temporary, subject to Emma's therapeutic needs and family situation. This is a lot of money, Elena said, staring at the number on the contract. It's what you're worth, Alexander said firmly. I'm a waitress pretending to be a nanny. I'm not worth this. You're the person who brought my daughter home and made her feel safe for the first time in 3 years. You're worth whatever number I put on that contract. His expression softened. Please sign it. Let me do this right. Elena signed, and with her signature, everything became official. She wasn't just helping anymore. She was employed, committed, legally bound to this family in ways that felt both more secure and more terrifying. That night, Emma had her worst nightmare yet. Elena woke to the sound of screaming and found Alexander already in Emma's room, looking helpless while his daughter sobbed and thrashed. I've got her, Elena said, moving to the bed. But when she tried her usual gentle approach, Emma lashed out, her hand connecting with Elena's cheek hard enough to sting. The girl's eyes were open but unseeing, still trapped in whatever horror her mind had conjured. Emma, stop! Alexander grabbed his daughter's wrist, trying to prevent her from hurting herself or Elena. Wake up! You're safe! Get off me! Please, please, I'll be good! Emma's voice was hoarse from screaming. Elena made a decision. She started singing. It was a lullaby her foster mother had sung to her once, years ago. She didn't remember all the words, so she hummed the parts she'd forgotten, keeping her voice low and steady. Gradually, Emma's struggling slowed. Her eyes focused. She saw Elena's face and burst into fresh tears, but these were different, aware, present. I hit you, Emma sobbed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Shh. I know. You were asleep. It's okay. It's not okay. I hurt you. Elena touched her stinging cheek. I've had worse, much worse. This is nothing. Alexander released Emma's wrists carefully. Emma, baby, can you tell us what the dream was about? But Emma just shook her head, curling into herself. Alexander looked at Elena helplessly. Let's try something, Elena said. Emma, do you trust me? A small nod. Okay. I want you to sit up. We're going to do breathing exercises. And then, if you want, you can tell us about the dream. Or you can draw it. Or you can keep it inside. Your choice. But first, we breathe. They spent 20 minutes working through breathing techniques Dr. Chen had taught them. By the end, Emma was calmer, though still shaky. The dream was about the last day, she said quietly, before Mom left me. We were in Grand Central, and she was angry because I'd asked for food. She said I was ungrateful, that she'd sacrificed everything for me, and I didn't appreciate it. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. She said she should have left me with Dad when she had the chance, that I ruined her life. Alexander made a choked sound. Elena shot him a warning look. And then what happened? Elena asked gently. Then she told me to wait by the bathrooms, said she'd be right back. I waited for hours. I thought maybe she was testing me, to see if I'd stay like she told me to, so I stayed. Emma wiped at her tears. But she never came back, and when it got dark, I got scared. I tried to find a police officer, but then I remembered all the things Mom said about Dad, how he was dangerous, how if the police found me, they'd take me back to him, and he'd hurt me. So you ran, Elena said. I ran. And I kept running for 6 months until you found me. Alexander's face was devastated. Emma, I would never hurt you. Never. Whatever your mother told you was a lie. I know that now, but I didn't know it then. Emma looked at her father with old, tired eyes. I was so scared all the time. And I missed you. Even though I thought you were dangerous, I still missed you. Something broke in Alexander then. He moved to the bed and pulled Emma into his arms, holding her while he cried. And this time, Emma didn't pull away. She held him back, crying too, both of them releasing 3 years of grief and fear and loss. Elena stood up quietly, ready to give them privacy. But Emma's hand shot out, grabbing hers. Don't go, please. So Elena stayed. She sat in the chair by the bed and watched father and daughter hold each other and cry. And she understood that this was what healing looked like. Not pretty or perfect, just painful and necessary and real. When the tears finally subsided, Alexander pulled back to look at his daughter. I need you to know something. Your mother was wrong about everything. You didn't ruin her life. You didn't deserve what she did to you. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know how wanted you are. Even though I'm different now? Even though I'm broken? You're not broken. You're hurt. And we're going to fix it together. Emma glanced at Elena. All of us? All of us, Alexander confirmed. And Elena realized that somewhere in the last 3 weeks, she'd stopped being an employee or a temporary helper. She'd become part of something bigger, part of this strange, damaged, healing family. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next morning, Emma drew another picture, but this time it wasn't violence or fear. It was 3 people standing together, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman in between. They were holding hands. She left it on the kitchen counter where Alexander would find it during breakfast, then looked at Elena nervously. Do you think he'll understand what it means? Emma asked. Elena looked at the drawing, at the careful way Emma had positioned them all touching, connected. Yeah, I think he'll understand. When Alexander found it an hour later, his eyes went bright with tears he didn't bother hiding. He picked up the drawing carefully, like it was precious. Can I keep this? He asked Emma. It's yours. He pressed it to his chest. Thank you. This is the best gift you could have given me. And Elena understood then that they were all healing. Not just Emma, all of them, together, even if none of them knew what came next. The break came on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after Emma had come home. Elena was making breakfast when Alexander walked into the kitchen holding his phone, his face drained of color. They found her, he said quietly. Victoria. She's in custody. Elena's hand froze mid-pour, coffee splashing onto the counter. Where? Miami. Living under a fake name in some rental apartment. His jaw clenched. She's been in the country this whole time. While Emma was freezing on the streets, Victoria was drinking cocktails in Florida. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. You found Mom? Alexander's expression shifted immediately, softening. Yeah, baby. The police have her. Elena watched Emma's face carefully. The girl's reaction wasn't what she expected. Not relief or fear, but something complicated that looked like grief. What happens now? Emma asked. Now she faces charges. Kidnapping, child endangerment, abandonment. The prosecutor says it's a strong case. Alexander moved toward Emma like he wanted to hug her, then stopped himself. She can't hurt you anymore. I know. Emma's voice was small. Can I go back to my room for a bit? Of course. They watched her leave. Elena grabbed paper towels to clean up the spilled coffee, her mind racing. How are you feeling? Like I want to get on a plane to Miami and strangle her with my bare hands. Alexander ran both hands through his hair. I know that's not helpful. I know it's not what Emma needs, but that's what I'm feeling. That's fair. She deserves it. The prosecutor wants Emma to testify. Give a statement at least about what happened. He looked at Elena. I don't know if she can handle that. Then she doesn't do it. They have enough evidence without her testimony. It would help the case. I don't care. Elena tossed the coffee-soaked towels into the trash harder than necessary. Emma doesn't exist to make their case easier. She's been through enough. Alexander stared at her. You're angry. Of course I'm angry. That woman tortured a child for 3 years and then threw her away like garbage. Yes, I'm angry. So am I. But you're better at hiding it. I'm not hiding anything right now. Elena took a breath, forcing herself to calm down. Sorry, I know you're dealing with this too. Don't apologize. I like seeing you lose your composure. Makes you seem human instead of superhuman. Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. I'm very human, trust me. James arrived an hour later with a briefcase full of legal documents and a federal prosecutor named Catherine Walsh, who looked like she ate defense attorneys for breakfast. They set up in Alexander's office while Emma stayed in her room, drawing pictures that were getting progressively darker. Elena sat in on the meeting at Alexander's request, taking notes and trying to understand the legal maze they were navigating. Victoria Morrison is claiming she acted in Emma's best interest, Catherine said, her voice crisp and professional. She's going to argue that she was protecting her daughter from an abusive father. That's insane, Alexander said flatly. I never touched Emma. Never. I know. But she's going to paint you as controlling and violent. She'll say she feared for Emma's safety. Let her say whatever she wants. We have 3 years of evidence that she's the abusive one. Catherine flipped through her notes. The problem is Emma. A defense attorney will argue that 6 months living on the street suggests she was afraid to come home, that she chose homelessness over returning to her father. Elena felt her stomach drop. That's not what happened. I know what happened, but this is what a jury might hear. Catherine looked at Alexander. Which is why I need Emma's testimony. I need her to explain in her own words why she was afraid. That she was afraid of her mother's lies about you, not afraid of you directly. No, Elena said before Alexander could respond. Absolutely not. Miss Brooks, I understand your protective instincts, but you don't understand anything. You want to put a traumatized 7-year-old on a witness stand and make her relive the worst years of her life for a jury of strangers. That's not happening. Catherine's expression hardened. Then Victoria might walk. Is that what you want? I want Emma to heal. Everything else is secondary. She won't heal if her mother gets away with this. The two women stared at each other across the conference table. Alexander cleared his throat. What if Emma gives a deposition instead? Recorded, with just a few people present? Would that work? Catherine considered. It's not ideal, but it might be enough. Especially if we have Dr. Chen provide expert testimony about Emma's psychological state. Then that's what we do, Alexander said firmly. No trial testimony. A deposition, done carefully, with breaks whenever Emma needs them. Elena felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the alternative. The meeting dragged on for another 2 hours, covering custody arrangements and restraining orders, and a dozen other legal details that made Elena's head spin. When Catherine and James finally left, Alexander collapsed onto his couch. I hate this, he said to the ceiling. Every part of it. Elena sat down in the chair across from him. I know. I should feel vindicated. She's finally facing consequences, but all I feel is tired. That's because revenge doesn't actually make you feel better. It just makes you feel different. He turned his head to look at her. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just observant. Elena pulled her knees up to her chest. How are you going to tell Emma about the deposition? Honestly and carefully, I hope. He sat up. Will you be there when I do? If you want me there. I always want you there. You've noticed that, right? How I'm completely dependent on you now? There was something in his tone that made Elena's heart skip. She ignored it. You're not dependent. You're learning. I'm both. Alexander stood up, crossing to the window. Can I ask you something personal? Depends on the question. Why haven't you gone back to your apartment, even to pack up your things properly? You've been here 6 weeks and you still don't have most of your stuff. Elena hadn't expected that question. I didn't want to leave Emma that long. That's part of it. What's the rest? She was quiet for a moment. There's nothing there I care about. The apartment was just a place I slept between shifts. Nothing in it matters. What about friends, family? Don't have any. The friends I had in high school scattered after graduation. Foster siblings moved on. I'm good at being alone. You shouldn't have to be. It's fine. I'm used to it. Alexander turned from the window. What if you stayed? Permanently, I mean. Not just until Emma's better. Actually stayed and became part of this family. Elena's breath caught. Alexander, I know it's complicated. I know there are professional boundaries and power dynamics and 1,000 reasons why it's a terrible idea, but I'm asking anyway. He crossed back to her. Stay. Let us be your family. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. Emma loves you. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I've come to depend on you in ways that have nothing to do with Emma. You make this place feel like a home instead of just a space I own. Elena stood up, needing the distance. You're grateful. That's different from actually wanting me here long term. Don't tell me what I'm feeling. Then don't make decisions based on gratitude and proximity. In 6 months, when Emma's doing better, you'll realize you don't need me anymore. Is that what you think? That you're only valuable as long as you're useful? The accuracy of that statement hit Elena like a slap. She turned away so he couldn't see her face. I should check on Emma. Elena, wait. Alexander caught her arm gently. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to push. I needed you to know that you have a place here, for as long as you want it. She pulled her arm free carefully. I appreciate that, but let's focus on Emma right now. The rest can wait. She left before he could argue, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with wanting things she had no right to want. Emma was in her room, surrounded by drawings. She'd been drawing the same scene over and over. A woman's face, angry and twisted, with dark scribbles obscuring the features. Hey, Elena said from the doorway. Can I come in? Emma nodded without looking up. Elena sat on the floor beside her. Your dad needs to talk to you about something. About your mom and the legal stuff. Are you up for that? Is he going to make me see her? No, never. But he might ask you to tell some people what happened. People who can help make sure she can't hurt you again. Emma's hand stilled on the paper. I don't want to talk about it. I know. But sometimes we have to do hard things to make sure we're safe later. Will you be there? If they let me, yes. Every second. Emma set down her pencil. Elena, do you think I'm bad? Because I miss her sometimes, even though she was awful? Elena's throat tightened. No, baby, that just means you're human. Love doesn't turn off just because someone hurt you. It's one of the worst parts about being a person. I hate it. Yeah, me too. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emma asked, Why did you really use my dad's card? The truth. Elena considered lying, then remembered her promise to be more honest. Because I was tired of feeling helpless. Tired of seeing people suffer and not being able to fix it. You were this little girl who needed help, and suddenly I had the means to help, even if the means weren't mine, so I used them. Were you scared? Terrified. I thought your dad would have me arrested. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. Emma picked up her pencil again. I'm glad you did, even though it was stealing. Me too. Alexander knocked on the doorframe a few minutes later. Emma, can we talk? Elena started to stand, but Emma grabbed her hand. Stay. So Elena stayed while Alexander sat on the floor with them and explained as gently as possible what the prosecutor needed. Emma listened with her face very still, very controlled. Do I have to look at her? Emma asked when he finished. No, she won't be in the room. It'll just be the prosecutor and a camera. And me and Elena, if that's okay. And Doctor Chen? If you want her there, yes. Emma was quiet for a long time, then, okay, I'll do it, but only once. I don't want to have to tell the story over and over. Once, Alexander promised. That's all. The deposition was scheduled for the following week. In the days leading up to it, Emma's anxiety spiked. The nightmares came back with a vengeance. She stopped eating again. Elena and Alexander took turns sitting with her, trying to keep her grounded. Dr. Chen increased their session frequency and taught Emma grounding techniques for managing panic. This is temporary, she kept saying. This spike in symptoms is normal when trauma gets brought back to the surface. It will get better. But watching Emma suffer made Elena want to call the whole thing off. Made her want to storm into the prosecutor's office and tell them to build their case some other way. I can't watch her go through this, Elena told Alexander one night after Emma had finally cried herself to sleep. They were in the kitchen, Elena making tea she didn't want, Alexander nursing whiskey he probably shouldn't have. We don't have a choice. We always have a choice. We could refuse. Tell them to leave Emma out of it. And if Victoria walks because we didn't give them enough to convict her, then she walks. Emma's mental health is more important than revenge. Alexander set down his glass. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. It's about making sure Victoria can't do this to another child. Victoria is their problem. Emma is ours. Emma will never fully heal if her abuser is free. You know that. Elena did know that, hated that she knew it. I just wish there was another way. So do I. Alexander's voice was tired. But we work with the reality we have, not the one we want. They sat in heavy silence. Then Alexander said, I saw the way you looked at me today. When I agreed to the deposition, you were angry with me. I wasn't angry. I was frustrated. Same thing. It's not. Angry would be thinking you made the wrong choice. Frustrated is understanding why you made it and still hating it. That's a very fine distinction. It's an important one. Elena wrapped her hands around her mug. I don't get to be angry with you for doing what you think is right for your daughter, but I get to hate how much it's costing her. Fair enough. He picked up his glass again, swirling the amber liquid. Can I tell you something? Always. I think I'm falling in love with you. Elena's mug slipped. She caught it before it hit the counter, but tea sloshed over the rim, burning her hand. She barely noticed. Don't, she said. Don't fall in love with you, or don't tell you about it. Both, either. Alexander, you can't. Why not? Give me one good reason. I can give you 10. I work for you. I'm here for Emma. You're emotionally compromised. The power dynamic is completely unbalanced. You're grateful and confusing that with actual feelings. Should I keep going? None of those are good reasons. They're excellent reasons. Alexander stood up, moving closer. Elena backed up until she hit the counter. I'm not confused, he said quietly. I know exactly what I'm feeling. I know it's complicated and probably a terrible idea and definitely bad timing, but I'm done pretending I don't feel it. Emma needs us focused on her. Emma needs us happy, and I'm happier when I'm around you. Not because you're useful, not because you're helping with my daughter, because you're you. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, he touched her cheek gently. You're allowed to want something for yourself, Elena. You're allowed to be more than just helpful. Elena's eyes burned. I don't know how to do this. How to be a person someone wants instead of someone needs. Then let me teach you. He kissed her before she could think of another argument. It was gentle and careful, and everything Elena had convinced herself she didn't deserve. She kissed him back before her brain could override her heart, her hands coming up to grip his shirt. When they pulled apart, Elena was shaking. This is a mistake. Probably. Emma can't know. Not yet. Not while everything else is so unstable. Agreed. And if this goes bad, I'm leaving. I won't stay and make things awkward for her. It won't go bad. You can't promise that. Watch me. He kissed her again, deeper this time. Elena let herself have it for 30 more seconds before pulling away. I need to think. And you need to not be drunk when we have this conversation. I'm not drunk. I've had half a glass. Then you need to not be emotionally raw. We'll talk about this later. When Emma's through the deposition and things are calmer. Okay. But he didn't step back, didn't stop looking at her like she was something precious. For the record, I meant what I said about staying, about being part of this family. I know. Elena slipped past him toward the hallway. That's what scares me. The day of the deposition arrived too quickly. Emma woke up pale and silent, barely responding when Elena tried to coax her into eating breakfast. Alexander looked like he hadn't slept. Elena felt like she might throw up from anxiety. They drove to the prosecutor's office in tense silence. Emma sat between them in the back of the car, holding both their hands. When they arrived, Catherine Walsh was waiting with a gentle smile that didn't reach her eyes. Emma, thank you for being brave enough to do this, she said. Emma didn't answer, just pressed closer to Elena. The deposition room was smaller than Elena expected. A camera on a tripod, a court reporter at a small desk, Dr. Chen in a corner chair, Catherine with her notes. Emma in a child-sized chair that somehow made her look even younger. "We're going to take this slow," Catherine said, her voice softer than Elena had heard before. "Anytime you need a break, you just say so. Okay?" Emma nodded. "Let's start with some easy questions. Can you tell me your full name?" Emma Rose Stone. "And how old are you, Emma?" 7? Almost 8? "When's your birthday?" "June 15th. The questions continued, gentle and basic. Emma's birthday, her favorite color, her favorite food, things designed to make her comfortable before the hard stuff came. Then Catherine's tone shifted. "Emma, can you tell me about your mother? What was she like when you lived with her?" Emma's hand found Elena's and squeezed tight. She was nice sometimes. At first. But then she got angry a lot. "What made her angry?" "Everything. If I was too loud, if I cried, if I asked questions." Emma's voice got smaller. "If I reminded her of my dad." "Did she hurt you when she got angry?" A long pause. Then, barely audible. "Yes." "Can you tell me how she hurt you?" She would hit me, sometimes with her hand, sometimes with other things. A wooden spoon, a belt once." Emma was shaking now. She said it was discipline, that I needed to learn. Elena wanted to stop this, wanted to pick Emma up and carry her out of this room and never make her talk about this again. But she forced herself to stay still, to keep breathing, to be the steady presence Emma needed. "Did she hurt you in other ways?" Catherine asked gently. "She locked me in closets when I was bad, sometimes for hours. In the dark." Emma's tears started falling. "And she wouldn't give me food if I didn't behave, said I had to earn it." Alexander made a strangled sound. Catherine shot him a look, and he went silent, but his hands were clenched into fists. The questions continued. Catherine was skilled at drawing out details without being cruel, but every answer felt like a knife to Elena's chest. The scope of Victoria's abuse was worse than even Emma's nightmares had suggested. Halfway through, Emma had a panic attack. "Doctor." Chen called for a break, and they all stepped out of the room while Emma worked through breathing exercises. Alexander paced the hallway like a caged animal. "I can't listen to any more of this," he said. "I can't sit there and hear what that woman did without—" "Without what?" Elena asked quietly. "Without wanting to kill her? Join the club. But Emma needs you calm. She needs you strong. So you're going to go back in there and you're going to hold it together." "How are you so calm?" "I'm not calm. I'm barely holding on. But Emma can't see that, so I'm faking it. You need to fake it too." He stopped pacing. "I don't know if I can." "You can. Because the alternative is Emma thinking she upset you, that her trauma is too much for you to handle, and she can't think that." Alexander took a shaky breath. "Okay, you're right. I'll hold it together." They went back in. Emma finished her statement, describing the final months of abuse, the abandonment in Grand Central, the fear that had kept her on the streets rather than coming home. By the end, everyone in the room was crying, except Catherine, who maintained her professional composure while taking notes. "You did so well," Catherine said when it was over. "So incredibly well. Thank you, Emma." Emma didn't acknowledge the praise. She just climbed into Elena's lap and buried her face in her shoulder, shaking with silent sobs. Elena held her and made soothing sounds and avoided looking at anyone else because if she met Alexander's eyes, she might fall apart completely. They drove home in silence. Emma fell asleep in the car, exhausted from emotional trauma. Alexander carried her to bed while Elena went to the kitchen and finally let herself cry. She was still crying when Alexander found her 20 minutes later. He didn't say anything, just pulled her into his arms and held her while she broke down. She cried for Emma, for the childhood that had been stolen, for the scars that might never fully heal. She cried for herself, for every foster home where she'd felt alone, for every time she'd needed someone to hold her and no one had been there. When the tears finally stopped, she pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Sorry. Don't apologize. I'm supposed to be the strong one." You were strong. For hours. You're allowed to fall apart now." He cupped her face in his hands. "I meant what I said the other night. I love you, not because you're helpful, not because you saved Emma, because you're you, because you're honest and fierce and you cry for other people's pain, because you make me want to be better than I am." Alexander, I know the timing is terrible. I know we should wait. But I need you to know that when this is over, when Emma's healing and the trial is done and things are calm, I'm going to ask you properly. I'm going to ask you to stay, not as an employee, as part of this family, as mine. Elena's heart was hammering. What if I'm not ready? Then I'll wait until you are. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll love you anyway and accept whatever you can give. She kissed him because words felt inadequate. Kissed him because he saw her clearly and wanted her anyway. Kissed him because for the first time in her life, someone was offering her a home and meaning it. They pulled apart when they heard footsteps. Emma appeared in the doorway, her hair messed from sleep, her eyes red from crying. I had another nightmare, she said quietly. Come here, baby. Alexander held out his arms and Emma ran to him. He picked her up like she weighed nothing. Want to sleep in my room tonight, both of you? Emma nodded against his shoulder. So they ended up in Alexander's room, Emma in the middle, Elena and Alexander on either side. It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt right, like they were building something real out of broken pieces. Elena? Emma's sleepy voice cut through the darkness. Yeah, sweetie? Thank you for staying. Always, Emma. I'll always stay. And lying there in the dark, listening to Emma's breathing even out into sleep, feeling Alexander's hand find hers across Emma's small body, Elena believed it. She was done running, done being alone. This was home now, even if the road ahead was still full of shadows. The trial date arrived 3 months later, and by then the penthouse had transformed into something that almost resembled normal. Emma was back in school part-time, attending a small private academy that specialized in kids with trauma histories. The nightmares came less frequently. She laughed more. She'd even started calling Alexander Dad again, instead of the careful Daddy that had always sounded like she was testing the word. But normal was fragile. Elena learned that the morning Catherine Walsh called to say Victoria's defense team had a new strategy. They're claiming Elena coerced Emma's testimony, Catherine said over speakerphone in Alexander's office. They're saying she coached her, that the deposition was contaminated by an untrained civilian with her own agenda. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. That's insane. It's legal strategy. They're going to paint you as the opportunist who saw a chance to ingratiate yourself with a billionaire and manipulated a traumatized child to do it. Let them try, Alexander said, his voice hard. No jury is going to believe that. You'd be surprised what juries believe when it's presented well. They're going to argue that Elena had financial motive, that she used Emma to secure employment and housing, that everything she's done has been calculated to ensure her own comfort. Elena's hands were shaking. I need to leave. If my presence is hurting the case... No. Alexander's voice was sharp. Absolutely not. Alexander, if they're going to use me against Emma, they're going to use everything against Emma. That's what defense attorneys do. But we don't give them what they want. He turned to Catherine. What do we need to do? We need character witnesses. People who can speak to Elena's integrity. Former employers, friends, anyone who knew her before she met you. Elena laughed, but it came out bitter. I don't have those people. I told you, I'm good at being alone. What about your boss at the restaurant? Marco? He barely knew my last name. I was just another waitress to him. Catherine sighed. Then we focus on the evidence. Emma's medical records, the testimony from Dr. Chen, the photographs of her living conditions when she was found. We make the case so airtight that Elena's role becomes irrelevant. But it wasn't irrelevant, and they all knew it. Elena had become central to Emma's recovery. Any attack on her credibility was an attack on Emma's stability. After Catherine hung up, Alexander pulled Elena into his arms. They'd been careful about physical affection, keeping it hidden from Emma until they were sure about what they were building. But right now, Elena needed to be held, and he seemed to understand that. This is my fault, she said into his chest. I should have thought about how it would look. Should have kept more distance. If you'd kept distance, Emma wouldn't have survived. You know that. Maybe. But now they're going to drag me through the mud, and Emma's going to have to watch it happen. So we prepare her. We tell her the truth, that Victoria's lawyers are going to say terrible things because that's their job. But none of it changes what actually happened. Elena pulled back to look at him. You really think she'll understand that? I think she's tougher than we give her credit for. And I think she trusts you enough to know who you really are, regardless of what some attorney says in court. He was right, but that didn't make the conversation with Emma any easier. They sat her down that evening after dinner in the living room where she felt safest, and explained as gently as possible that the trial was going to be hard. Victoria's lawyers are going to say things about me, Elena said carefully. Things that aren't true. They're going to try to make it sound like I helped you for the wrong reasons. Emma's face went stormy. That's stupid. You helped me because I needed help. I know that. You know that. But they're going to tell a different story. So we tell them they're wrong. It's not that simple, sweetie. In court, lawyers are allowed to present their version of events. Our job is to present ours and hope the jury believes us. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, are you going to leave because of what they're saying? No, I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Elena met Alexander's eyes over Emma's head. He nodded slightly. I promise. No matter what happens in that courtroom, I'm staying right here. Emma threw her arms around Elena's neck. Good, because I need you. And if those lawyers say you're bad, they're liars. Alexander's hand found Elena's shoulder, squeezing gently. They were in this together now, all three of them. Whatever came next, they'd face it as a family. The trial started on a gray Monday that felt appropriately miserable. Elena had never been inside a courtroom before. The reality of it, the formal procedures, the crowd of strangers, the way Victoria sat at the defense table looking small and sad instead of like the monster Elena knew her to be, made her stomach churn. Victoria's hair was different, cut short and dyed lighter. She wore a simple dress that made her look maternal and harmless. When she saw Alexander and Elena enter, something flickered across her face. Not fear or shame, something closer to satisfaction. Don't look at her, Alexander murmured, his hand on Elena's lower back. She doesn't deserve your attention. But Elena couldn't help it. This was the woman who'd tortured Emma, who'd abandoned her, who was now sitting in court playing the victim. Catherine's opening statement was strong. She laid out the facts methodically. The kidnapping, the abuse, the abandonment, the evidence that supported each claim. The jury listened attentively, some taking notes. Then Victoria's attorney stood up. Robert Chen was in his 60s, silver-haired and grandfatherly, with a voice that dripped sympathy. His opening painted Victoria as a desperate mother fleeing an abusive relationship, who'd made mistakes under extreme circumstances but had always acted out of love for her daughter. You'll hear about a woman who took her child and ran, he said, making eye contact with each juror. You'll hear about the years they spent in hiding. And yes, you'll hear that eventually, in a moment of mental breakdown brought on by years of fear and stress, she made a terrible mistake. She left her daughter in a public place. But ask yourselves, does one moment of crisis erase years of maternal devotion? Does it justify the kind of vengeful prosecution we're seeing here? Elena felt sick. He was good. Too good. He made Victoria sound sympathetic. The first week of trial was procedural. Witnesses testified about the initial kidnapping, about the investigation, about the evidence trail that had gone cold. Alexander took the stand and gave measured, careful testimony about his marriage to Victoria, about the custody battle, about the day Emma disappeared. Victoria's attorney tried to rattle him. Mr. Stone, isn't it true you threatened your ex-wife during custody proceedings? No? You never said you'd make sure she never saw Emma again. I said I'd fight for custody. That's not a threat. That's a legal process. And when you lost joint custody and were only granted supervised visitation, you were angry, weren't you? Alexander's jaw clenched. Elena had heard this story. The court had initially restricted his custody based on Victoria's false allegations. It had taken 6 months to get the ruling reversed. I was frustrated by false accusations. Yes. False? Or simply allegations you successfully defended against with expensive lawyers? False, provably false. The judge said so when he reversed the order. The attorney smiled like he'd made his point anyway. Elena wanted to scream. Dr. Chen testified next, explaining Emma's psychological state, the trauma markers, the evidence of long-term abuse. She was unshakable on cross-examination, responding to every question with clinical precision. Then it was Emma's turn. The deposition video was played for the jury. Elena sat in the gallery and watched Emma's small face on the screen, heard her describe the abuse in her quiet voice, and had to fight not to cry. Several jurors wiped their eyes. Victoria sat stone-faced. When the video ended, Victoria's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to call Elena Brooks to the stand." Elena's heart stopped. Catherine had warned her this might happen, but warning didn't make it easier. She stood on shaky legs and walked to the witness stand, acutely aware of every eye in the room following her. The oath felt heavy on her tongue. She sat down and tried to remember everything Catherine had coached her about. Answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer information. Stay calm. Robert Chen approached with a kind smile that didn't match his eyes. "Miss Brooks, you're currently employed by Mr. Stone, correct?" "Yes." "And you live in his home?" "Yes." "Rent-free with full room and board provided?" "It's part of my employment compensation." "Very generous compensation, I imagine. What's your annual salary?" Catherine stood. "Objection? Relevance?" "I'm establishing the financial benefit Miss Brooks receives from this arrangement, Your Honor." "I'll allow it." "Answer the question, Miss Brooks." Elena swallowed. $200,000 annually, plus room and board. A murmur went through the courtroom. Chen's smile widened. "That's quite a raise from waitressing, isn't it?" "It's a different job." "Indeed. A job you obtained by using Mr. Stone's credit card without permission. Is that correct?" "I used his card to help Emma, yes." "And that's when you discovered who she was? When you realized you'd found the missing daughter of a billionaire?" Elena's hands clenched. "I realized who she was later that night, when I saw her birthmark." "And you immediately called the police?" "No." "Why not?" "Because Emma was terrified. She'd been living on the streets for 6 months rather than seek help because she was afraid of what would happen if anyone knew who she was. I wanted to understand why before I made that decision for her." "How convenient. So instead of calling authorities, you spent the night with her, used more of Mr. Stone's money, bought her clothes and food, created a bond." "I made sure she was safe and warm, that's all." "And the next day you called Mr. Stone?" "Yes." "Did you ask for a reward?" "No." "Did you negotiate your current employment before telling him about Emma?" "No, I didn't ask for anything. I called him because his daughter needed him." Chen paced in front of the jury box. "Miss Brooks, you've testified that you have no family, no close friends. You were living alone in a small apartment, working long hours for minimum wage plus tips. Is that accurate?" "Yes." "And now you live in a penthouse, make $200,000 a year, have become, by all accounts, an integral part of Mr. Stone's household. You have everything you didn't have before. Would you say finding Emma changed your life?" Elena saw the trap, but couldn't avoid it. "Yes, it changed my life, but I didn't plan that. I just wanted to help a child." "Or perhaps you saw an opportunity." "A vulnerable, traumatized child who needed someone to trust. A wealthy father desperate to get his daughter back. And you positioned yourself perfectly to benefit from both." "That's not what happened." "Isn't it? You've admitted to theft, to making decisions about Emma's welfare without any legal authority to do so, to forming an attachment with her that conveniently resulted in permanent employment and housing. From where I'm standing, it looks like you saw a chance and took it." "Objection!" Catherine was on her feet. "Counsel is testifying instead of questioning." "Sustained, Mr." Chen asked questions. Chen turned back to Elena. "Have you been intimate with Mr. Stone?" Elena's breath caught. Catherine stood again. "Objection! Relevance?" "It goes to bias, Your Honor. If Miss Brooks is romantically involved with Mr. Stone, it affects her credibility." The judge considered. "I'll allow it, but tread carefully, counselor." Chen looked at Elena expectantly. She could lie, should lie, probably. But she'd promised Emma honesty, and that meant being honest now, even when it was devastating. "Yes," she said quietly, "we're involved." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Alexander's face went pale. Emma, sitting in the hallway with a victim advocate, wouldn't hear this testimony, but she'd hear about it eventually. "So to be clear," Chen said over the noise, "you used Mr. Stone's credit card without permission, inserted yourself into his daughter's recovery, secured lucrative employment, and then entered into a romantic relationship with your employer. And you expect this jury to believe that none of this was calculated? It wasn't calculated. It just happened. How convenient that it just happened to result in you living a life you could never have afforded otherwise. Elena's temper, usually so controlled, flared. You want to know what I got out of helping Emma? I got nightmares. I got the weight of a traumatized child's trust on my shoulders. I got the responsibility of helping her heal from the abuse your client inflicted. I got to watch her scream in her sleep and flinch from sudden movements and draw pictures of her own torture. That's what I got. The money, the housing, the relationship, those were things that happened later. But I'd have helped her anyway. I'd have done it for free, living in my crappy apartment with nothing to gain except knowing she was safe. So yes, my life changed. But not because I planned it that way. Because sometimes doing the right thing changes you whether you want it to or not. The courtroom was silent. Chen stared at her for a moment, then said, "No further questions." Elena left the stand on shaking legs. She avoided looking at Alexander as she returned to her seat. Catherine leaned over and whispered, "That was good. The jury needed to hear your anger." But Elena didn't feel good. She felt exposed and raw and like she'd just confirmed every terrible thing Victoria's lawyer had implied. The trial continued for another week. More witnesses. More evidence. The medical examiner who documented Emma's injuries. A forensic psychologist who testified about the long-term effects of parental abuse. Neighbors from one of the apartments Victoria had rented who reported hearing a child crying and sounds of violence. Then Victoria took the stand. She cried beautifully, talked about how she'd feared for Emma's safety, how Alexander had been controlling and possessive during their marriage, how she'd felt she had no choice but to run. "And the abuse Emma described?" the prosecutor asked on cross-examination. "The hitting, the locking her in closets, the withholding of food?" "I never abused my daughter," Victoria said, her voice breaking. "I disciplined her, yes, as any parent does, but I never hurt her. Emma's memories have been poisoned by Miss Brooks and my ex-husband. They've turned her against me." "What about abandoning her in Grand Central Station?" Victoria's tears flowed harder. "I was having a mental breakdown. I couldn't think clearly. I thought Emma would be better off without me, that she'd be found and returned to Alexander and finally be safe from our life on the run. I made a terrible mistake, but it came from love, not cruelty." It was a masterful performance. Elena could see some jurors softening, reconsidering. The doubt Chen had planted about Elena's motives seemed to be spreading to doubt about everything. Closing arguments came too quickly. Catherine was brilliant, laying out the evidence piece by piece, showing the pattern of abuse, the calculated cruelty, the abandonment. But Chen was equally brilliant, spinning a story of a desperate mother and a vengeful father and an opportunistic woman who'd manipulated everyone for her own gain. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 days of Elena barely sleeping, Alexander pacing constantly, Emma asking over and over if they thought her mother would go to jail. 3 days of Catherine warning them not to get their hopes up. The juries were unpredictable. On the 3rd day, the jury came back. The courtroom packed with spectators and press. Emma wasn't there. They'd agreed she shouldn't be present for the verdict. But Elena felt her absence like a weight. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor." Elena grabbed Alexander's hand. He squeezed so hard it hurt. "On the charge of kidnapping, how do you find?" "Guilty." Elena's breath rushed out. Alexander's hand tightened even more. "On the charge of child endangerment?" "Guilty." "On the charge of child abuse?" "Guilty." The courtroom erupted. Victoria made a sound like a wounded animal. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shook him off, standing abruptly. "This is wrong," she screamed at the jury. "You don't understand. He took her from me. He turned her against me. That woman," she pointed at Elena with a shaking hand. "She stole my daughter." The bailiff moved toward her, but Victoria kept screaming. "Emma is mine, mine! I carried her, I raised her, and they took her away." "Mrs. Morrison, sit down," the judge ordered. But Victoria had snapped. She tried to climb over the defense table, still screaming, reaching toward where Alexander and Elena sat. It took 2 bailiffs to restrain her. She fought them, wild-eyed and incoherent, nothing left of the sad, sympathetic woman who'd testified days before. This was the real Victoria, the one Emma had lived with, the one who'd hurt her. The judge called a recess while they removed Victoria from the courtroom. Elena sat frozen, her hand still in Alexander's, trying to process what had just happened. "It's over," Alexander said, his voice hoarse. "It's really over. Sentencing still has to happen. But she's guilty. They believed us. They believed Emma." Catherine appeared at their side. "Sentencing is in 6 weeks. Given the severity of the charges and her outburst just now, I'd expect significant prison time. Probably 20 years minimum. 20 years. Emma would be nearly 30 before Victoria was eligible for parole, old enough to decide for herself if she ever wanted contact with her mother again. They left the courthouse through a back exit to avoid the press. The car ride home was silent. Elena stared out the window, trying to feel relief or vindication or anything besides exhausted numbness. Emma was waiting in the penthouse with the nanny they'd hired for trial days. The moment she saw them, she knew. "Guilty?" she asked. "All counts," Alexander said. Emma's face crumpled. She started crying, and Elena couldn't tell if it was relief or grief or both, probably both. Emma had wanted justice, but she'd also wanted her mother to somehow not be the monster the evidence proved she was. "Come here, baby," Elena said, opening her arms. Emma ran into them, sobbing. Alexander wrapped his arms around both of them, and they stood there in the foyer holding each other while Emma cried for the mother she'd lost and the one she'd never really had. Later, after Emma had cried herself to sleep, Alexander found Elena on the balcony. She was staring out at the city, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know. I should be happy. We won. Victoria's going to prison. Emma's safe. But I just feel empty." "That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline for months. Now that the crisis is over, the crash hits." Elena turned to face him. The defense attorney was right about some things. My life did change because of Emma. I did benefit from helping her. So what? That doesn't make what you did wrong, doesn't it? I'm living in your home, making more money than I've ever seen, sleeping with my employer. From the outside, it looks exactly like what he said. Opportunistic. "Elena, look at me." Alexander took her face in his hands. "I don't care what it looks like from the outside. I know the truth. Emma knows the truth. And the jury knew it too, or they wouldn't have convicted. You didn't manipulate anyone. You just showed up and did the right thing and kept doing it even when it was hard." "I'm scared," she admitted. "Now that the trial is over, what happens? Do we just go back to normal, pretend none of this happened? We figure out what normal looks like now, for all three of us." He kissed her forehead. "And for the record, I don't want to pretend any of this didn't happen. It brought you into our lives. I'm grateful for that, even though I hate what Emma had to go through." Elena leaned into him, letting herself be held. "What are we going to tell Emma? About us?" "The truth. That we care about each other. That we're figuring things out. That nothing changes how much we both love her." "You think she'll be okay with it?" "I think she already knows. Kids always know." Alexander pulled back to look at her. "But we'll tell her together, when she's ready to hear it." They stood there in the cold for a while longer, holding each other, watching the city lights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Emma's continued healing, the sentencing hearing, the process of building a life that wasn't defined by crisis and trauma. But tonight, they had this: each other. And a little girl sleeping safely inside who trusted them to figure out the rest. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The conversation with Emma came sooner than expected. 2 weeks after the verdict, Elena walked into the kitchen to find Emma sitting at the counter, swinging her legs and watching her with a knowing expression that was far too old for an 8-year-old. "So when were you going to tell me?" Emma asked. Elena nearly dropped the coffee pot. "Tell you what?" "That you and Dad are together, like together. Elena set the pot down carefully and came to sit beside Emma. "How long have you known?" "Since forever. You guys aren't as sneaky as you think." Emma picked at a loose thread on her pajama sleeve. "I saw you holding hands once, and you look at each other weird." "Weird how?" "Like you're both scared and happy at the same time. It's the same way Dad used to look at my drawings when I was little, like he couldn't believe something good was real." Elena's throat tightened. Are you upset? Emma considered the question seriously. I don't think so. I mean, it's weird, but also kind of not weird. You're already here all the time. You already feel like, I don't know, like family. You're okay with that? With me being family? Elena, you've been my family since the first night. The rest is just catching up. Emma looked at her directly. But I need to know something. If things get bad between you and Dad, are you going to leave? The question hit Elena hard. What makes you think things will get bad? Because things always get bad eventually. At least that's what happened with Mom and Dad. They loved each other once, and then they didn't, and then everything fell apart. Elena pulled Emma into her lap, even though she was getting too big for it. Listen to me. Your dad and I are not your mom and dad. We're different people in a different situation. But I can't promise you that nothing will ever go wrong, because that would be a lie. People mess up. They fight. They hurt each other sometimes even when they don't mean to. So you might leave. What I'm saying is that even if your dad and I have problems, I'm not leaving you. You and I? That's separate. That's forever, regardless of what happens between me and him. You understand? Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, what if I'm the problem? What if you guys fight about me? Then we'll work it out. Together. That's what families do. Real families are just the families in movies. Elena laughed despite herself. Real families, I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but people do actually figure this stuff out. It's messy and hard, and nobody's perfect at it, but they make it work because they want to. Emma relaxed slightly in her arms. Okay, but you have to promise to tell me the truth. If things are bad, I want to know. I don't want to be surprised again like with Mom. Deal. We tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And I get to tell you when you're being gross. Like if you start kissing in front of me. That's fair. Emma scrambled out of Elena's lap as Alexander walked in, already dressed for work. He stopped when he saw their faces. What did I miss? Emma knows, Elena said simply. About us. Alexander's expression went carefully neutral. And how do you feel about that, Em? I feel like you should have told me instead of making me figure it out myself. But I'm not mad. Emma grabbed her backpack from the chair. Can we get pancakes on the way to school? I want the ones with blueberries. Just like that, the crisis was over. Elena and Alexander exchanged glances over Emma's head, both a little stunned by how easily she'd accepted it. Pancakes sound perfect, Alexander said. They settled into a rhythm after that. Emma went to school 5 days a week now, making friends slowly but surely. Dr. Chen reduced their sessions to once a week. The nightmares came maybe once or twice a month instead of nightly. Elena officially moved her few belongings from her old apartment, though there wasn't much worth keeping. Alexander started working from home more, learning to balance his business empire with being present for dinner and bedtime stories. It wasn't perfect. Emma still had bad days where she couldn't get out of bed, where the weight of everything that had happened crushed her. Alexander still struggled with guilt, with the feeling that he should have protected her better. Elena still woke up, sometimes convinced this was temporary, that she'd wake up back in her tiny apartment and discover this whole life had been a dream. But they were figuring it out. Victoria's sentencing hearing came 6 weeks after the verdict. Elena, Alexander, and Emma sat in the front row as the judge delivered 25 years with possibility of parole after 20. Victoria, heavily medicated and eerily calm, showed no reaction. She was led away in handcuffs without looking at any of them. Emma cried in the car afterward, and when Alexander asked what was wrong, she said, I wanted her to say she was sorry. I know she's not. I know she doesn't think she did anything wrong, but I still wanted to hear it. I'm sorry she couldn't give you that, Alexander said quietly. It's okay. I'm learning that sometimes people can't give you what you need, and you have to find it somewhere else. She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather instead of articulating something most adults never learned. Elena caught Alexander's eye in the rearview mirror. They were both thinking the same thing. Their daughter was going to be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not for a long time, but eventually. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning in late spring, Alexander called a family meeting. Emma groaned dramatically. If this is about my math homework, I already finished it. It's not about homework. Alexander looked nervous in a way Elena had rarely seen. I have something important to ask both of you. He pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's heart stopped. Dad, are you serious right now? Emma's eyes went wide. Very serious. He turned to Emma first. I need to ask you something before I ask Elena. Would it be okay with you if I asked her to marry me, to officially be part of this family? Emma looked between them, her expression unreadable. Then she said, only if I get to be a bridesmaid, and I'm not wearing anything with ruffles. I hate ruffles. Alexander laughed, relief flooding his face. No ruffles, I promise. Then yes, obviously yes. Are you kidding? Elena's the best thing that ever happened to us. He turned to Elena then, dropping to one knee in their living room while Emma bounced excitedly on the couch. I had a whole speech planned. Something about how you saved my daughter and taught me how to be a father and made this house feel like a home. But the truth is simpler than that. I love you. Emma loves you. And we want you to stay forever, not as an employee or a helper, but as my wife and her mom in all the ways that matter. Will you marry me? Elena looked at the ring, at Alexander's hopeful face, at Emma grinning like this was the best day of her life. 6 months ago, she'd been a lonely waitress with no family and no future. Now she had everything she'd never let herself want. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, I'll marry you. Emma launched herself at them both, and they ended up in a pile on the floor, laughing and crying and holding each other. The ring got forgotten for a solid 5 minutes until Emma noticed it. Oh, wow, that's huge. Can I try it on? Absolutely not, Alexander said. That's Elena's. He slipped it onto Elena's finger and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably had it sized weeks ago, waiting for the right moment. When's the wedding? Emma asked. Can we get a dog after the wedding? I've always wanted a dog. We're not getting a dog just because there's a wedding, Alexander said. But we might get a dog eventually. Emma's eyes were pleading. We'll discuss it, much later. Elena watched them negotiate the terms of a hypothetical pet and felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This was her life now. Not because she'd manipulated anyone or calculated an outcome, but because she'd made one impulsive choice to help a child and everything had spiraled from there. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the penthouse. No huge production, no press, just close friends, and the people who'd helped them through the worst of it. Dr. Chen came. Catherine Walsh came. Even James gave a surprisingly heartfelt toast about how love shows up in unexpected ways. Emma wore a deep purple dress without a single ruffle and stood beside Elena during the ceremony, holding her bouquet and crying happy tears. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Emma called out, I object to how long this is taking. Can we get to the food? The whole room laughed. Alexander married Elena with their daughter as a witness, and Elena understood that this was what family looked like. Not perfect people doing everything right, just broken people choosing each other and committing to show up anyway. The reception was small and intimate. They'd converted the living room into a dining space, strung lights across the ceiling, hired a chef instead of catering. Emma gave a speech that was mostly jokes about how embarrassing her parents were, but ended with, I'm really glad Elena found me that night, because she gave me my dad back and she gave me herself, and now I have a real family again. Even if they are kind of weird. Everyone applauded. Elena cried into her champagne. Alexander kissed her like they weren't surrounded by people. And Emma made exaggerated gagging sounds. It was perfect in its imperfection. Later, after the guests had gone and Emma had fallen asleep in her room still wearing her dress, Alexander found Elena on the balcony. She was still in her wedding gown, looking out at the city that had brought them together. Hi, wife, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Hi, husband. The word felt strange in her mouth. Good, strange. What are you thinking about? How different my life is from a year ago. How if you hadn't left that card, none of this would have happened. Do you regret it? Using the card? Elena turned in his arms to face him. Not for a second. Even knowing everything that came after, the trial, the scrutiny, all of it, I'd do it again. Even though people still think you're an opportunist who manipulated her way into wealth? Let them think what they want. I know the truth, you know the truth, Emma knows the truth. That's enough. He kissed her, soft and sweet. I love you. You know that? I'm aware. You did just marry me. Best decision I ever made. Well, second best. First was not having you arrested for credit card theft. Elena laughed. Your bar for good decisions is concerningly low. My bar is perfectly calibrated, thank you very much. They stood there in the cool night air, holding each other, watching the city lights blur and shift. Tomorrow they'd wake up to the reality of merged lives and legal paperwork and figuring out how to be married while raising a traumatized child. But tonight, they just had this. 6 months into the marriage, Emma came home from school with an assignment that required her to write about a hero in her life. She worked on it for days, secretive and focused. When she finally shared it, it was during dinner, reading from crumpled notebook paper. My hero is Elena Stone, she read, her voice steady. She used to be Elena Brooks, but now she's Elena Stone and she's my mom, even though we're not related by blood. She's my hero because she saw a kid who needed help, and she helped, even though it was scary and she didn't know what would happen. She taught me that family isn't about blood or laws or any of that stuff. It's about who shows up when things are hard. It's about who stays. Emma looked up from the paper. I wanted to write about both of you, but Mrs. Martinez said I could only pick one. So I picked Elena because Dad already knows he's my hero, but Elena maybe doesn't know yet. Elena couldn't speak. Alexander reached over and squeezed her hand. The end, Emma said, setting down the paper. I got an A, by the way. Mrs. Martinez said it made her cry. It made me cry too, Elena managed. Good. That means I wrote it right. Emma grinned. Can I be excused? Sarah invited me to her house to work on our science project. Go ahead. Be back by 7. Emma bounced off, leaving Elena and Alexander alone at the table. You okay? Alexander asked. I don't know. I never thought of myself as anyone's hero. I was just doing what needed to be done. That's what makes you a hero. You don't do it for recognition. You do it because it's right. Elena wiped her eyes. When did we get so lucky? When you decided to steal my credit card instead of returning it immediately. Best theft I ever committed. Let's not put that on a greeting card. They laughed, and it felt easy. Natural. Like they'd been doing this forever instead of just over a year. A year and a half after the wedding, Alexander came home with news. His company was launching a new initiative, a foundation dedicated to helping missing and exploited children. They'd provide resources for searches, support for families, therapy for recovered children. I want to name it after Emma, he said, the Emma Stone Foundation, but only if she's comfortable with it. They asked Emma that night. She thought about it seriously before answering. Will it help other kids like me? That's the goal. Then yes. But I want to be involved, not just like my name on stuff, actually involved. What did you have in mind? I could talk to other kids who've been through bad stuff. Tell them it gets better, that they're not alone. Dr. Chen cautioned against it at first. She's still healing. Taking on other people's trauma could be harmful. But Emma was insistent. I'm always going to be healing. That doesn't mean I can't help people. They compromised. Emma would participate in age-appropriate ways, recording video messages, attending some events, being available for kids who specifically asked to talk to someone who understood. But she'd have limits. Boundaries. Protection. The foundation launched 6 months later with a gala that drew celebrities, politicians, and activists. Alexander gave the keynote speech, talking about the 3 years he'd spent searching for Emma and the waitress who'd brought her home. The night Elena used my credit card to help a stranger, he said to the packed ballroom. She had no idea that stranger was my daughter. She just saw a child who needed help and decided that helping was more important than following rules. That choice, that moment of compassion, saved my daughter's life. And it reminded me that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is just pay attention. Notice the people who are suffering, see them, help them. Elena sat at their table with Emma beside her, both of them crying. Emma had insisted on coming to the gala, despite it being way past her bedtime. She wore another purple dress and was fielding questions from curious donors about what it was like to be the foundation's namesake. It's weird but good, she told one woman. Like, I went through something terrible, but now other kids might not have to go through it alone because of what I survived. That makes it mean something, you know? The woman looked stunned by the wisdom coming from a 9-year-old. Elena understood the feeling. Emma had a way of cutting through noise and finding truth that still surprised everyone around her. At the end of the night, after the speeches and the donations and the press photos, the three of them rode home together in the back of the car. Emma fell asleep between them, her head on Elena's shoulder. "Think we did okay?" Alexander asked quietly. "I think we did exactly what we needed to do." Elena looked down at Emma's sleeping face. "She's going to change the world, this kid. She already changed ours." Yeah, she really did. 2 years after the wedding, on an ordinary Tuesday, Emma asked a question that changed everything again. "Can I call you Mom?" she asked Elena over breakfast. "Like, officially? Instead of just Elena?" Elena set down her coffee. "Where's this coming from?" "I don't know. I was thinking about it. You do all the mom stuff. You've been here longer than my bio mom was actually a mom to me. It feels weird not calling you that when it's what you are." "What about your biological mother? How do you feel about that?" Emma shrugged. "She gave birth to me. That's just biology. You chose to be my mom. That's harder. That means more." "Emma, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. So can I?" Elena looked at Alexander, who was watching them with suspiciously bright eyes. He nodded slightly. "Yes," Elena said. "Yes, you can call me Mom." Emma grinned. "Cool. Hey, Mom, can you help me with my math homework later?" Just like that, it was settled. Emma started calling her Mom, and Elena started introducing herself as Emma's mother, and the world adjusted to this new reality. Life continued in its messy, imperfect way. Emma had setbacks, days where the trauma caught up with her and she couldn't function. Elena and Alexander had fights about money and parenting and stupid things that didn't matter. The foundation grew, helping hundreds of families, returning dozens of missing children to their homes. But they always came back to each other, always chose to work through the hard stuff instead of running from it. On Emma's 10th birthday, they threw a party with 20 kids from school and enough sugar to fuel a rocket launch. Elena watched Emma laugh with her friends, confident and happy, and so far from the scared child she'd met on a street corner 2.5 years ago. "She's going to be okay," Alexander said, appearing at Elena's side with 2 slices of cake. "I know, it's weird, isn't it? After spending so long worried about her, actually believing she'll be fine feels strange." "We did that. Together." "We did." Elena took the cake he offered. "Think we can do it again?" He looked at her sharply. "What? I'm not saying now, or even soon, but eventually, would you want more kids?" Alexander was quiet for a moment. "I think Emma should probably weigh in on that decision." "Probably. I'm just thinking out loud. For what it's worth, I think you'd be an amazing mother to more children. You already are to Emma." They watched Emma blow out her candles, surrounded by friends and love and possibility. She caught Elena's eye across the room and grinned, frosting on her nose. That night, after the guests had gone and the presents were opened and Emma was asleep in her room, Elena and Alexander lay in bed talking about the future, about maybe having another child, about growing old together, about watching Emma graduate and fall in love and build her own life. "Do you ever think about that night?" Alexander asked. "The night you found her?" "All the time. It's the hinge everything else swung on." "If you could go back, knowing everything that was coming, the trial, the scrutiny, all of it, would you still use the card?" Elena didn't even hesitate. In a heartbeat, every single time. "Why?" "Because some choices aren't really choices. They're just the right thing to do dressed up to look like a decision. I saw a child who needed help. Everything else was just details." Alexander pulled her closer. "I'm really glad you're a thief. Technically, I returned the card, after using it extensively, for charitable purposes. I'm sure that would hold up in court." Elena laughed, burying her face in his shoulder. "I love you. You know that?" "I'm aware. You did marry me and raise my daughter and agree to possibly have more children with me. The evidence is compelling. Your bar for evidence is also concerningly low. My bar is perfectly calibrated, thank you." It became their running joke, this idea that his standards were too low and hers were too high, and somehow they met in the middle and made it work. 5 years after Elena had first used Alexander's black card, the foundation held its anniversary gala. Emma, now 12 and terrifyingly articulate, gave a speech about resilience and healing that had the entire ballroom in tears. People ask me if I'm angry about what happened, she said into the microphone, no longer nervous about public speaking. If I hate my biological mother for what she did. And the truth is, I'm working on it. Some days I'm angry, some days I'm sad, some days I'm just grateful to be here. Feelings are complicated and messy, and that's okay. She paused, finding Elena and Alexander in the crowd. But what I know for sure is that trauma doesn't have to define you. It's part of my story, but it's not the whole story. The whole story includes my dad, who never stopped searching, and my mom, she smiled at Elena, who saw a stranger and decided to care, and all the people who helped me heal. That's the story I want to tell. Not the story of what broke me, but the story of what put me back together. The applause was deafening. Elena cried into Alexander's shoulder while he held her and whispered, "We raised an incredible human. We really did." After the gala, they went home to their penthouse that had long since stopped feeling like Alexander's space and started feeling like theirs. Emma kicked off her heels and complained about how much her feet hurt. Alexander loosened his tie and raided the fridge for leftover pizza. Elena changed into comfortable clothes and started making tea. This was family. Not the perfect Instagram-worthy version. The real version, with dirty dishes and tired feet and pizza at midnight. "Mom?" Emma called from the kitchen. "Yeah, baby?" "I was thinking, for my birthday next month, instead of presents, could people donate to the foundation? There's this girl, her name is Sophia, and she's been missing for 2 years. I thought maybe if we raised enough money, we could help find her." Elena joined them in the kitchen. "That's a beautiful idea, but are you sure you're only turning 13 once?" "I'm sure. I have everything I need. Sophia doesn't even have her family." Alexander pulled Emma into a hug. "You amaze me every day, you know that?" "I learned from the best." She hugged him back, then reached out to include Elena. "Both of you." They stood there in their kitchen, holding each other, and Elena thought about the long path that had brought them here. The black card, the cold street corner, the terrified child, the trial, the healing. All of it. People had called her an opportunist, a manipulator, someone who'd calculated her way into wealth and status, let them think what they wanted. She knew the truth. She'd seen a child who needed help, and everything else had followed from that single choice. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is just show up, pay attention, care about someone else's pain enough to do something about it. That's what Elena had learned, not from books or therapy or grand philosophy, from a freezing November night and a little girl begging for food and a moment of decision that changed 3 lives forever. "I love you both," she said into the group hug. "So much." "We love you too, Mom," Emma said. "Forever and always," Alexander added. And that was it. That was the whole story. Not about a billionaire or a waitress or a missing child. About people who chose each other despite everything, who built a family out of broken pieces and called it home. The black card still existed, tucked away in a drawer somewhere. Alexander had never canceled it. Sometimes Elena would see it and remember that night. The weight of it in her pocket, the decision to use it, the child who'd needed help. Best theft she'd ever committed. Best choice she'd ever made. And if someone had asked her years later what the lesson was, what the point of it all had been, she would have said this: love isn't about perfect people making perfect choices. It's about broken people choosing to show up for each other anyway. It's about seeing someone's pain and deciding it matters. It's about staying when leaving would be easier. That's what family means. That's what love is. Everything else is just details.